This is Brown Struggle in Canada, and today we are taking you to the Botanical Gardens of Montreal.
These days, Quebec has a system of vaccine passports implemented. So, to go to the Botanical Gardens of Montreal, you would require a reservation beforehand, and then you can simply head to the ticket counter to get your tickets and start your visit.
To enter, you see the garden is all prepped for the Gardens of Light for the evening. There is also a hologram map which has both of the maps of the day and night gardens. There is also a list of 17 different gardens that you can see. We wanted to go to the most popular ones, and for that we headed towards the Chinese garden.
Now, the walk to the Chinese garden is not actually a boring walk. First of all, we encountered the Halloween setup that they have prepared for the upcoming Halloween. And it was a beautiful trail of magic steps where you could jump from step to step and see the garden. It's especially a good garden for the kids. In this garden, there are also some magical huts that are very, very nicely created with some environmental music. And as you proceed further, you see a grand statue of the lion before you enter into the first garden, that is the Rose Garden. Now, the Rose Garden is just on the way to the Chinese garden. It is a very beautiful garden filled with different kinds of roses.
The Chinese garden shows the methodical effort that went to creating and maintaining these gardens. You are introduced to the first landmark before the Dream Lake through a trail of beautiful Chinese lanterns. There is also a beautiful 3D map of the Chinese garden right beside the entrance.
The first gate of the Chinese garden is your first moment of awe while visiting these gardens. They not only serve as a corridor into the dream lake of the garden, but are sprinkled with little elements of Chinese culture that set up the mood for what's coming next.
And as you enter the Dream Lake, the true scale of the Chinese garden comes into view. The giant architecture in the middle of the garden is called the Friendship Hall, and opposite to it was a beautiful lake. During our visit, the lake was set up with the cultural exhibits, and I believe this setup was done for the Gardens of Light.
As you start walking further on, you would find a resting place where you can sit for a while and enjoy the view of the Dream Lake. After resting and taking some photos, we started going around the lake to see the rest of the architectural buildings. There are also many other places to see within the lake. There's a beautiful boathouse and some more decoration for the Gardens of Light. After walking a little bit more, you're gonna reach the Tower of the Condensing Cloud. It's truly a magnificent setting. The tower is accompanied by the mountain. This beautiful setup is a waterfall where you can sit and relax near the dripping sound of water.
As we went all the way around the lake, there was a protruded section to get the complete view of all the beautiful elements at once. After that, we entered the springtime courtyard, which was filled with beautifully landscaped miniature pots.
After seeing the springtime courtyard, we entered into the Friendship Hall to see the exhibition. After the Chinese garden, we were walking towards the second cultural garden, and just on our way we happened to come across the aquatic garden. This garden is filled with some aquatic and wetland plants. They're designed in a way that you're able to view these plants at your eye level, and I believe that's such a unique experience to see them up close.
And after the aquatic garden, we finally arrived at the Japanese garden. We first went to see the cultural pavilion where the Japanese cultural exhibition was held. This included the art pieces, a quick view of the stone garden, and artifacts from the Japanese culture. As you exit the exhibition hall, you meet with all the different elements on the pathway that leads to a beautiful pond filled with koi carp swimming around.
There's multiple color of this fish in the pond. You're basically standing on a wooden log right above these koi carp, and it's such a serene experience. Now it was time to head out and do some lunch before we come back for the Gardens of Light. As we came back for the Garden of Light at night, we were very pleasantly surprised by how the entrance was set up. We already knew that we were up for something very, very special. All of the translucent paper setups lit up at night and everything looked completely different. Now for the Garden of Light, there was a predetermined path that we followed. So first we headed down to the Japanese garden.
The cultural pavilion had thematic projections on its outer walls. As we went around the pavilion, the outer woods were lit with modulating lights. There was also music playing to set up the mood for a very spooky Japanese vibe.
As we exited the Japanese garden, the lit pathways took us to the First Nation Gardens. The First Nation Gardens, in my opinion, had some of the most unique setups of lighting.
As we followed the illuminated pathway, it took us right towards the Chinese garden. All the paper lanterns that we saw in the morning were now the only thing lighting our path. It made our pathway so much more beautiful and atmospheric.
We went once again through the same entrance and the same first courtyard, but now we came out to a completely different dream lake. Suddenly, in this section of the Chinese garden, the lake was not the highlight. It was rather the exhibits that we saw not in such a great light in the morning. The focus was now on the architecture and on the several Chinese cultural paper exhibits. The focus was on the Pangu giant and on the dragon right beside it.
After the Chinese garden, the path for the Gardens of Light came to an end. In our opinion, this is probably the best time to visit the Montreal Botanical Gardens so you can enjoy both of the experiences. Thank you so much for watching and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.